Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. My guest today, Dr. Mark Mendeszoon, is a successful podiatric physician from Chardon, Ohio. Dr. Mendeszoon's career includes working with Olympic athletes, owning 2 running stores called the Achilles Running Shop, and he's currently employed by the Physician Orthopedic Specialties. Dr. Mendeszoon is also a fellowship director of the University Hospital Advanced Foot and Ankle Surgery Fellowship. He also has recently been appointed as an assistant professor at his alma mater, Miami University. Welcome to Dean's Chat, Dr. Mendeszoon.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here. Really excited when you invited me last month.
Thank you so much for joining me. And, Mark, we go with kind of an informal fireside chat vibe. So if we can go with Mark and Jeff, I think that's the way to go. All right. Sounds great. Mark, you've had a storied career, and we're going to touch on all of it. But there's really a hot topic right now in our profession, and that's fellowship training. And I've known one of your graduates from your fellowship program. And, every year, we graduate 500 or so residents, and they're all looking for jobs. And they don't know right now if it's best to find a job that looks promising and take it, or if they should pursue potentially getting additional training in the form of a fellowship. So I was hoping we could discuss that.
Yeah. It's interesting because, having the ability to work in precision orthopedics with being the only podiatrist and doing all the foot and ankle work, been doing that since 1995 here, we do have some fellowship trained DOs and MDs. And you can see the significance of when they finish their training. I would say a guarantee is more of a job, better pay, security, things like that. And I know that fellowships in podiatry is something that there's more and more coming out. And I think it's not standardized quite yet. It's getting there. And I know with our program, I've been very fortunate that we are CPME approved and also FACFAS approved. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's one of the only, if not the only one that's out there. So I think fellowships, when they are finishing up, if you have great training and you have a great job opportunity, I would tell the students or the residents, take it, because you can learn along the way. What I'm doing today is very little of what I've done in residency. Yes, I was fortunate to train with Dr. Havishall, and that's why I wore the bow tie, rest his soul. I mean, he took me under his wing, scrappy little kid, and he fought for me. And I miss him, and he was tremendous. And I miss my days of being a resident, because I remember the first day being at Deaconess in Boston, we had to introduce ourselves. And we were a part of the surgery department. You have all these bright people from Harvard and Brown and Cornell and Stanford. And what's your name? Mark Mendeszoon, Pennsylvania College of Podiatric Medicine. Taking the ACLS exam and things like that. It was a harrowing experience. And I was very fortunate to learn integration working with medical people. Our surgery skills were basic, but we knew how to work 30 people on the floor. We did all the rounds. We were the primary medical people. So I knew how to run a code. I knew how to do an EKG. I knew the difference between gastroparesis and someone having an MI. And so I really emphasize the medicine. So I think if you come out with good training, with the way we have support by orthopedic companies and supply companies and all, the schools, what they're doing, you can learn your training. But when it comes time to make a decision, I just hope that they don't fall into the trap. I'm going to be a fellowship trained, and it's going to guarantee me success.
Right.
I think you and I both know success isn't guaranteed with anything. And what's always interesting is that when you look at LinkedIn, or if you look at people's titles, especially now, people put fellowship trained foot and ankle surgeon.
Right.
And that's great. But man, I think we're starting to lose a little bit of what we are as podiatrists. And yes, I do a lot of surgery, but I really emphasize medicine and biomechanics. And when I started for 15 years, I was in nursing homes, and I did 3,000 nursing homes every 10 weeks. I did house calls, you do whatever. And I think sometimes we're forgetting what our roots are.
Right.
And that's a shame. So I think when I get interviews, the first question that people ask me, how many total ankles do you do? And I go, as little as possible and as many as necessary. How about if I teach you how to be successful in building a practice, getting good surgical skills, learning how to interact with other medical specialties, and how to be part of the community? And some people like that answer and some don't. But I would say from a selfish standpoint, fellowship has taken my program in the last 10 years, my practice through the roof. Because I always question, how can people be published? How can they be so academic? How can they write so much? When I'm getting up at 5 a.m. and I'm working 12, 13 hours doing surgery, always on call, then when do you have time to write? And we see a lot of great cases. And when I took the fellowship over, I was working with Dr. Jonathan Sharp, a good friend of mine, and he's a great doc, and he was the director. He asked me if I would work with him, and we did, and then he broke off and did his own fellowship, and I took this over. From me, from an academic perspective, an educational perspective, it has just taken me to the next level as far as wanting to learn more, wanting to be more academic, wanting to teach, and wanting to really scratch the surface. And with that, one of the requirements I have for the fellowship is you got to get published and we got to do some real research. And I've been fortunate to do that lately. And at Iowa State, doing a project of one of my procedures I do, working with exercise physiologists, mechanical engineers, anatomists, and it's kind of cool that things are coming full circle again. So I would say anybody who's out looking for a fellowship, ask yourself why. Ask yourself if you're married or with a partner, are they going to want to go another year? My current fellow is, his wife lives in Louisville where he did his residency program, and he's up here and they're separate for a year. So he's making the sacrifice for it. And the great part is he's from Oklahoma, Dr. Brandon Kitchens. He's got the two biggest orthopedic groups in Tulsa who is offering him a job, and he's selected. And he says, it's nice to hear when people leave the fellowship saying, I would not be doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for the fellowship. Good, bad, or indifferent. And that's kind of cool. So I would say fellowships right now, if we can get more standardized, if we can standardize the process of when interviews are allowed, we're now offering people's fellowships in April of their second year.
Unbelievable.
Right. And I remember when I first started, I was interviewing people in November. Now people are like, hey, I got a program. So I hope that we can standardize the process. I hope that we can have a quorum or a forum where people will discuss the pros and cons of it. It can be helpful if you're looking to do advanced training. If you don't have the greatest surgical or podiatric program, it may be beneficial, but not all programs are the same. And I think even with residencies, as we try to standardize our programs, to me, I think that will give us a foot to stand on when we're looking for jobs, when hospitals are employing us, things of that nature.
That makes sense. Mark, let's spend a few minutes talking about standardization and, making sure that we're doing what we say we're going to do and having a schedule. And from an accreditation perspective, I work with CPME with the school, of course. And
Yes.
when I started a residency, we did the same. When you talk about standardization, what are you talking about exactly for fellowships?
Well, I think we're about the same generation. And when we were residents, there was RPR, PMR, and PSR.
Right.
Somehow we lost that. And we're the only profession when we graduate, we can actually operate on people. Think about that.
Right.
But, sometimes it's beneath them. I don't cut toenails. How do people introduce themselves? I'm a foot and ankle surgeon, and that's great. But as I tell people, if you have loans to pay, and if you're, not taking somebody in, especially when you're building your practice, to take care of their nails or calluses or put a Lodi strap on or, how to do a biomechanical exam, you're missing the boat.
Right.
Because the bottom line is you got to build your practice. And unless you're in a very unusual situation where it's just being spoon-fed to you and you're immediately doing, these crazy cases, good luck. I used to have hair. Now I don't. It's stressful, right? I think I calculated, and people don't believe it, but I think in 28 years, I've done over 18,000 cases. And so that's a lot of volume and that's a lot of stress. And even to this day, I'm on call 24/7. And, you have to have a good partner to support you with that. So I think as far as standardization, I think we should definitely standardize the interview process. and maybe have a central application. I think it would be very helpful if we standardize an interview and then selection dates like we do with residency, and that everybody is exposed, to the residents that is fair for them. Because a lot of programs may not allow you to leave in March or April to go to Ohio or Phoenix or Dallas. And it's now everybody's trying to grab, quote, the best students or best residents. And it's not, I don't think it's a fair process. And then the cost of it is just phenomenal for these, for the students and young doctors who are already absorbing a lot of financial impact.
Absolutely. So from a standardization, I can see that administratively. How about curriculum-wise? What are you looking at there, and what needs to be done to make that standardization happen?
I think curriculum-wise, I think there should be a base number. If it is a surgical fellowship, definitely. I think they should do it like residency. I think you should have, your biomechanics, your medicine, your surgical cases. I think we should be able to standardize that as far as what are you doing really in the fellowship? And also, how many people are double or triple scrubbed? Are you really doing the case? And my brother, Wally, he's the director at Boston Medical Center. And he went through CPME, and, there were some things that they interviewed him on. And I know programs where kids are 3-4 deep in surgery. And are they actually doing the surgeries? And I had to figure out how you grade it. Is it A or B or C? But are they constituting that case as that they did a skin to skin?
Right.
So I think that has to be looked into both at the residency route as well as the fellowship route. I think not only that, but to me, at least with my practice, I want the fellows to be independent. So thank God for them. And that way we were able to work it out is that, the last 2 years I've been gone almost every weekend from September to December, watching my son play. I'm going back to Iowa State and going to all the games. And the weekends they take it on. So it's their responsibility to run the office, to learn billing, to put out fires, to take the calls, how to document with Epic and the new computer systems. And I think that makes a very competent person. I think surgery, we all can learn surgery. But I think how to become a good business person and how to maximize your efficiencies and your skill sets. To standardize, I think in the practice, I think there should be a minimum case numbers, just like we do. If we're preparing these students and residents for becoming board certified, maybe we start to implement the certification process if they're fellows. Right. And maybe they can use some of those cases towards their boards and things like that. So I think having a collection of different ideas and ideologies from different doctors and professors and leaders would maybe make it a better process. So that way, when they graduate a fellowship, people are going to say, yeah, they have that extra training and they're worth X, Y, Z maybe.
And that makes sense to me. I also think, unintended benefits, right? You think you're getting busier being a fellowship director, but in many ways, like you said, it opened up your bandwidth to do research, to publish, to travel. I think that there's no downside to this fellowship opportunity in the right situation.
Absolutely. It's last year I was very honored and humbled. A company, we were mentioning, and so last April they had the Mendeszoon Fellowship reunion, and they flew everybody in, and it was a workshop in a lab, and I was able to talk. And we just able to exchange ideas. And it was so cool to see people come from around the country. I have about 22 fellows that I've worked with because I have 2 a year. And it was just really, and oh my God, then they did a parody on me and a spoof. So at dinner the night before, all my Mendeszoonisms and all my tics, and it's so humbling that people will take time out. So I always consider them family. And they know I'm out there for them at any time. So the fellowship has made me smarter. It's made me look at things differently. I learn from them because they're being trained from really good attendings and doctors and colleagues that I don't know everything. So I think it's raised my game and it's made my life easier, honestly.
Right.
And more rewarding.
You sound like a proud papa.
Yeah, it is fun, And then when you see them at meetings and you see that they're doing well, or they send you a birthday card or a Christmas card, or they give you a call saying, hey, what do you think about this case? So you can't ask for anything more. You're paying it forward. And I think whether it's coaching or teaching or doing a fellowship directorship, and those that want to be in touch with us, that's great. And those who don't, that's okay too. But it is nice to see them grow. It is fun.
Absolutely. So Mark, in my role as the dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine, I'm used to getting students ready for going out on clerkships and presenting cases and giving them some interview skills that'll help them. What do you recommend to current residents when they're going to go out and apply for fellowships? And what are you looking for in a great fellow?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's twofold because it is a two-way street. I look at a person and I don't really look into their resume. I just got to get a feel or a vibe. So they come in, they spend 2 days with us. They talk to my fellows. We see how they are. We see if they help out. You just get that vibe. Being a New York City kid, you just always on edge, and you can feel that vibe. Because if they got into residency, I just want someone who's going to work hard, who's going to appreciate the opportunity, and honestly, someone that's going to value my patients, because it really is about the patients. And if they don't treat them right, it's a reflection on me and thus my practice, and that becomes problematic. But I think someone that really wants it, someone that has vision that they want to be a leader of our field, someone that wants to teach, somebody that is honest and says, look, I got through my residency program, but I'm not quite there. And I think extra training could be beneficial. So I think honesty and sincerity from the prospective applicant, to me, is what I look at. And then also, because I have two fellows, I got to put personalities together. And when I first started the two fellowship spots about 5 or 6 years ago, I remember one of the fellows came in and said, is there going to be enough work for us? I said, trust me, you're going to have enough work. Well, are you sure? I said, yes. And they were both, I got in trouble because when they graduated that year, I said, I had a tremendous year, and they're both females. And I said, they were both alpha dogs. And I said, they were amazing. And I said, that's personality. I'm an athlete. I want someone that's going to be athletic, competitive, someone that's going to take the bull by the horns, and someone that's going to face adversity and try to figure things out. So I think from that perspective, that's great. And what I think we can offer here at my program, I am starting to add the downfall of my program. It's just me. And with politics and everything, I'm trying to add more staff. So Dr. Ayasu Haley spent 2 years with me. And that's the other thing. My program can either be a 1 year or 2 year program. So that's good. And we got sponsored for that. And then I remember one of my fellows spent 6 weeks in Russia, doing the FACFAS in Kurgan. And she went all by herself all the way there. And I'm like, call me when you get into Turkey, call me when you land. And those 6 weeks, and what she came back with external fixation gave me even more knowledge. So it's a two-way street. And I think I'm willing to get a job. Your priority is for me to help you find a job. My priority is for me to give you the exposure and the tools to become successful, not to be abused by some horrible contract and being taken advantage of, because I was there many years ago. And just to give them that experience, to give them the confidence to spread their wings and develop their own, skill set and their practice and have that footprint. So I think that's what they can get out of the program. They can do anything. I mean, and we've been very fortunate with our practice, or depending on how you look at it. We do peds, we do trauma, we do reconstructions, we do diabetics, we do a lot of elective, we do a lot of sports medicine, and there's nothing that we won't do. And when they come in and say, Doc, let's try this, as long as they can justify it and justify the cost of it, then I'm willing to do anything with them. So it has been really a two-way street to improving me and hopefully helping them get to the next level.
Well, that's fantastic. As I've been talking to different residency directors around the country, there's some residency directors like John Steinberg they're directing their residents to prepare them for a fellowship.
Yeah.
And then I was talking to Dan Hatch the other day. You remember Dan, president of
Yeah.
ACFAS? Dan's of the opinion, in hindsight and looking forward, that fellowship training is going to be a separator down the road. And, it's It's a great opportunity, Mark. I mean,
It's,
when else are you going to get an opportunity to get more training, to become a
right.
better doctor?
Yeah.
Because you know how life is. You get on, you get married, you get a house, you get
Yeah.
kids. It's hard to go back and rewrite the script.
Yeah, you can't change it. And if they're willing to make the sacrifice and it fits them and fits their family needs or their lifestyle, I would say yes. You can never get more training. And what's kind of nice for a couple of the resident or the fellows that were with me, I said, do you understand that you're one of the few people in this country who have 5 years of training?
Right.
5. Now, I'm not going to say you're an MD or DO, but you can't sneeze at that. And you have it at 2 different institutions. So that to me, or 4 years, that extra year is helpful. So it is something I think, with the leaders of the names that you mentioned, and if they can, bring together their intellect and their vision and standardizing, I think it just gives us as a field of podiatry, galvanizes us more to have that respect from, I don't really care about hospitals per se, but it's the hospital administrators and insurance. I think that's important.
I agree. Wow. Well, I commend you. Excellent work. And what a great leader in our field. Thank you so much. I mean, I want to sign up for your fellowship. When can I apply, Mark?
Come on in. We got plenty of work. It's fun.
All right.
It is fun.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about, I mean, if you don't mind just sharing some history. You were an athlete and then you went to college at Miami University. Now you're an assistant professor there.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Share with us that story.
It's so I was a track kid from New York, pretty poor, and needed to get a scholarship to get out of that situation. And I grew up in a rough area, and it was a good area too. But I can tell you, I've lost friends to drugs and AIDS and gangs, and track saved my life. And I'll just leave it at that. I was going down the wrong path. My older brother, having an older brother who is good at what they do, following his footsteps and doing the same thing is kind of, you have to have a special skin for that, especially when they're smarter and better than you. And my brother, to this day, he's my hero. I mean, he's my leader. Everything he did, I wanted to be like my big brother. And he was a smart guy and he was a good athlete. He even hired me when I finished school out of college when I was in no man's land. And what's weird now, he's a podiatrist and I started before him.
Wow.
And I don't know, I wish he came to Cleveland in the 90s, but he's still up in Boston. And so it's kind of weird to think that we have two first generation kids in the field of podiatry. And he was a chemist. And so for me, I was supposed to go to University of Pennsylvania. I couldn't afford it. Thank God for my coach, who's my surrogate father. It was June, and after that, all scholarships are given up. So he went to Kent State. He made some phone calls, and my options came between a full ride at Kent State, a full ride at Miami of Ohio, or a half ride to Boston University. And I just wanted to get out in the worst way. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to Miami. Never seen the school. Graduated, got my acceptance letter on August 16th, 1983. And 3 days later, with $40 in my pocket, 2 suitcases and a boombox, I flew from New York to Cincinnati Airport, which is in Kentucky. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm in Kentucky. So it was such an eye-opening experience. And then I was stuck in the airport and the bus station for almost 18 hours and no one picked me up. And then I wound up getting picked up by a guy who just graduated on the team, never saw cornfields, didn't realize Miami of Ohio was in the middle of nowhere. It had no housing for the first 2 weeks, was in overflow housing. It was foreshadowing because Miami was very difficult for me. Not being from the Midwest, being, from New York, having a very interesting accent, knowing that I needed a scholarship to get through school. My coach, he just passed away. He wasn't very kind, and times in the 80s were tough, and it's different back then. So, you could talk about mental anguish and physical anguish and stress. It was. And I had no other options. And even when I wanted to transfer, he wouldn't let me. Now you have NIL and transfer portal. Right. You couldn't do that back in the 80s. So it was tough. I was a journalist major. I love journalism. And thanks to my roommate, who's like my brother, who's a dentist, he knew what he was going to do right away. 8 years old, I want to be a dentist. I'm going to go to Ohio State for dental school. I'm going to live in Cincinnati. That's what he did. And I just wasn't enjoying the classes with journalism. So he goes, hey, Zoom, you got all these foot problems. My cousin's podiatrist. He lives in Florida. It's an easy job. He works 3 days a week. He makes a good living. And I'm thinking, okay, sounds good to me. So that's kind of how I got to the podiatry path. But it was a struggle. And, I graduated, got through it. Supposed to go to Tennessee for my master's program in exercise physiology and be the assistant track coach. And that fell through last minute. I ran, trained 2 years. I was running, you can quote professionally or post collegiately after. And my high school coach comes to the rescue again. And he left his high school at Bayshore in New York, and he went and became the head coach at Stony Brook University. So I became his first graduate assistant. I go, what's that? He goes, well, I pay you to go to school. You help me coach, and you go to grad school for free. So when I graduated and Tennessee fell through, I was making $5 an hour with a microbiology degree. It was miserable in some plant. And my brother would drop me off. I had no car. I was in a big industrial plant. And I remember one day I would walk to his office, sleep on the picnic table, and his boss shooed me away like I was a vagrant. I said, no, my brother works here. He goes, he does? He goes, you got a degree? I go, yes. He goes, so I started making $7 an hour, working, doing like lab tech stuff. And when Tennessee fell through, they appointed me to be like a research chemist. And I was making $20,000. I was getting paid $8,000 to go to grad school. And then my job was double dipping. So all my physics and chemistry classes they were paying for. So I went from making $5 an hour to almost $40,000 going to grad school. But it showed me hard work. I've always worked hard, but I was working from 6 to 2 o'clock, drive a half hour to the university, coach from 3 to 6, and then go to school Monday through Thursday night from either 7 to 10. Friday, Saturdays, I was driving up and down the East Coast because back then we were the drivers on the 15 passenger vans. Sure. And I loved it. And the only day I got to study was Sunday, and rinse and repeat. So I chose going out of there. And then I wanted to go to the San Francisco school for podiatry. But my mom, she was alone in New York. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I didn't want to be that far. So I decided to go to Pennsylvania. And at that time, there was a relationship with UPenn. And the track coach who recruited me 4 years ago remembered me, and he allowed me to coach the team, gave me a locker, let me eat with the team for free and to compete with the team. So I was still able to coach. And I was taking some grad school classes. I wanted to do the PhD route. It just got too overwhelming at Penn. But I feel close to Penn. And then I was going to go to San Diego at Dr. Green and his program. Yeah. And then Dr. Habishaw gave me the opportunity to go to Boston. I'm like, Boston would be cool. And so I went to Boston and graduated there. And then I was going to go do the fellowship in Seattle. And I had the assistant track coach position at University of Washington. And it was with Rich Boucher, his program.
Sure.
And they called and it was, Mark, good news, bad news. What's the good news? We love you. Great. And this was in like April, May, or June. I can't remember. What's the bad news? We're going to postpone your appointment for a year.
Oh, no.
So I had to scramble. So I came to Cleveland just for 1 year. Now I'm in my 28th year in Cleveland.
Oh, my God.
And I started with a podiatrist, a chiropodist, really. He had 3,000 nursing home beds. It was a bad situation. I lasted for about 18 months. He sued me. He sued the company, Precision, who took me on. And, the way I found Precision was that I was, my background in athletics and training. Mike Kellis, one of my partners, goes, hey, can you cover football games for us? I'm like, yeah. So that's how I got in relationships with them. We time-shared in an office in Cleveland. And I remember a family friend broke their ankle. And I gave the x-rays to my friend, and Dr. Shaw, and I said, Jeff, this person broke their ankle. I said, can you take care of it? He goes, no. Oh, man. He goes, why not? He goes, you take care of it. I said, no, I can't do that. I'm not trained to do that. He goes, get your butt in here. And he let me do the case with him. And I had a Charcot case, and he trained some podiatrists in Toledo before he came to Cleveland. And they took me under their wing. So when I left the podiatry group, the guys, I'll never forget, they're like, okay, you're a surgeon, right? I go, no, podiatrist. They go, no, you're a surgeon. So for the 2 years, I made it into a fellowship. Wow. Whether you want to call it certified or not, but for the first 2 years when I joined Precision, I was building my practice, and I would see patients at night, and I would follow them, and they would teach me everything. So I did every hip and back and knee and shoulder and spine and carpal tunnel. And when trauma came in, I was like their PA or their first, and I took care of all that. And all those skill sets of scoping a knee or a shoulder or back, I started implementing into my practice.
Wow.
And to have that support and to have that, I mean, we're still family, and I would go to bat for them. So they gave me an opportunity back in the 90s, which was very unusual and very rare, where everybody expects to do, be an orthopedic group. And we've had our ups and downs, but to be here for 28 years and to be a full partner and vice president, and now we have 10 people in our group and we're growing, and still to be the only podiatrist, it's been a blessing. It really has. So coming back with the fellowship, just learning more academics and trying to do more research, which I would love to retire at a university. I think we talked about that this summer.
Right.
And, I was appointed at Iowa State, so I'm doing some research and working in the kinesiology department and the anatomy department, biomedical science department. When I go out there, it gives me something to do. Then with Ohio University, their med school, I'm a clinical professor. And then at Kent State, doing the sports medicine and rehab. So it's like I got all these titles, which are great, but now I need to get, maybe get a final position. And I would love to live in a university town, and I just thrive in that environment. So Miami opened up a PA school, a physician assistant program, and I reached out, and I got that appointment about 2 weeks ago, and I'll be teaching the musculoskeletal division of the PA school in Miami.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, so it's fun.
So, Mark, I wanted to ask you about your relationship with Dr. Habershaw. You're not the first one who said he's my mentor. Barry Rosenblum and I talked, and he spoke so highly of Dr. Habershaw. What was it about him that made such an impact on his residents and students?
I think with Jeff, and I remember he gave me some sage advice when I left. And it was interesting. And off the air, I'll tell you how my program went. But he always had my back, good, bad, and indifferent. And he was a man of his word, and there was no false pretense. People don't realize what he did at Deaconess and how he integrated podiatry. And so a lot of the not wound care centers, but limb salvage centers, I think Jeff and Dr. Gibbons, the vascular surgeon, really started that. And then, Barry, I'm very close with, and we have nicknames for one another. We used to do a clinic in Mattapan. So we always, hey, Mattapan, how you doing? And Barry was so good, and John Durini. So we had a small core of attendings, and Tom Lyons was the other attending, who really had a big impact. And just seeing how they were integrated and respected by the MDs, and to be at so-called the Harvard hospitals. And then, you see how they started writing books and articles. It piqued my interest. But Jeff was the kindest man alive. I remember, he would invite us to his house for Thanksgiving when we were far away. He would sit down with you and talk about life. He was from New Jersey, so we talk about the beach, and his wife was from a town over on Long Island from where I was. And he's just a guy who was so good at what he did. He pushed the envelope, but knew his limits, and he knew how to work with other people. And that I try to honor from him. And, the bow ties and things like that. But if it wasn't for him, the way I got that program, my good friend, Kaz Bafar, is in Seattle now at the VA. Everybody knew he was going to get the program. And that year, they just opened up a second spot. And I'll never forget, Kaz came down and he knocked on my door because Phil Basile was a fellow. And Phil called him and said, hey, Kaz, we're going to take you number one. And then he comes down, Kaz goes, I said, that's great. Congratulations. Because I was thinking about going out west. And Kaz goes, well, there's a problem. I go, what's that? He goes, well, they opened up a second spot and they ranked you number 2. I go, what? I wasn't even expecting that. And I remember when I met Jeff through the old crypts, when you had to go to DC and Chicago and all those things. And I was sitting at the bar watching the game, and he comes up, he goes, so you're that hurdle guy. Tell me about running and hurdles in your career. And I think that's the only reason I got the program. But I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I miss him. And he was and he gave me the sage advice saying, Mark your word. He goes, 15 years is when you'll get overnight success.
Isn't that
and
funny?
On my 15th year anniversary, I called him up. I said, Jeff, I think you're right. So yeah, he was a great man.
Oh, that's great. What a wonderful mentor. Shifting gears again, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm super jealous because you own 2 running shoe stores, and I always fancied myself doing something similar, but never pulled the trigger. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, there's my story and there's my wife's story, and thank God for her because she runs it. And as she says, and excuse my vulgarity, his dream, my hell. um, as you know, being a business person is difficult, especially in the land of Amazon and online. And so it was just pure ignorance. Probably that's the best word. Thinking that, okay, I'm a podiatrist. I'm connected in a track and field world. I know a little bit about running. I know a little bit about shoes. Let's just open a shop. I'm a podiatrist. Not many people have that. So I had a partner and we opened it up and we didn't know anything. Honestly, we'll be 18 years now. And it has been struggles. And I would say if there was any strife with my wife and I, that store was a lot in the beginning. So fast forward, we got rid of our partners, we separated. I asked my wife, I said, do you think we can become successful? She goes, yes. And we had a store manager who I coached when he was 8 years old. He wanted to go into medicine. He was paying like $35,000 for a private school after his first year, not getting any help from his parents. And I said, you're not doing the right choice. Don't do that. You're going to be so much in debt. Come home, go to Cleveland State, great bang for your buck. And then he changed over to business. So in the second year when he finished, he goes, Doc and Chris, I think I know what I want to do for my living, for my career. I go, what's that? He goes, I want to do this for a living. I'm like, no, you don't want to do this. So David has been with us for 16, 17 years. He's now 33. He has 2 kids. He's married. He is a rock star. So that success of Achilles is people think I may be the face of it, but the backbone is David and the staff and, my wife. It's really them. And I do love it because remember the show Cheers?
Yes.
Norm would come in and everybody say, hey, Norm. I always envisioned having people come to the store talking like we're talking right now. I probably get no sales done, talking track and field, talking running. And I realized, okay, we can do that. But then we learned the business side of things. And that probably took us a good 7 or 8 or 9 years to do that. We're in a really good spot right now. We have our store in Willoughby, Ohio, which is 15 minutes from where we are, and then one in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I always dreamed of trying to franchise this because we know the model.
Right.
And if you go to some of the big chain national models, I know what the prices are. So I always said, people ever have an interest, we can get you through it, but understand it's not just selling shoes. It's a business aspect. So, but from that said, the people I've met, the referrals to my practice, it just started building up me as quote as a running guy. Yeah. Everybody says they're a running specialist or this or that, but to see the body inside, to know biomechanics, to keep learning biomechanics and kinesiology, and to understand what's going on in this shoe generation with all the different shoes, you got to be on top of it. Yeah. And so it's been a fun ride. And now you're starting to reap the rewards from it and seeing that all the hard work, it's hard to believe 18 years has gone like that, but it's been a blessing and it's ours. We're not a franchise. We started from scratch. So blood, sweat and tears and bricks and mortar.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Congratulations. I remember in 1979, I was in high school and I was watching Bill Rogers win the Boston Marathon with that Snoopy hat on in the rain. Yep. And then when I went to Boston, he had a running shoe store.
Yes.
So I thought to myself, oh my God, I'd love to have a running shoe store with coffee and books.
Yes.
That would be the ideal.
That's the ideal. And then I was trying to do a wine bar.
There you go. For after the
I think
run.
they have one in Eugene. Yeah. So, but it's fun. And, like I said, most runners are good people and you enjoy it. And, I try to get to the stores when I'm not getting crushed. But in the beginning, oh my God, I was in the store every night. And then we open up another store and you don't realize it's, in the medical field, hey, I need a product. I'm doing this surgery. I need this orthotic. Or I need this wound care product. Boom, boom, boom. People are at your door immediately.
Right.
Not with running shoes. It is tough. And when there's established businesses in the area, it's kind of like they got full grip, and trying to get the products. So we started our store with Avia, yes, Reebok, Puma, all these second category shoes. And God, I can't even, Rika, I think, and having no clue. And then our first major brand was Mizuno. And the only reason I got Mizuno was that my buddy who I coach with and we started our track club with ran at University of Michigan. So his teammate was a sales rep. So we opened the door with that. Then we got Brooks because I was another Michigan person. But we didn't have Nike and Asics for about 5-6 years. And you had to beg really. Well, we'll come back and we'll see how you're doing. Come back in 6 months, come back in 6 months. So we had to open a second store, which was a colossal failure in what town is that? Meadville, Pennsylvania.
Really?
Exactly. And we did that because it was a school, Allegheny College. And we're thinking it's only 30 minutes south of 30, 40 minutes south of Erie. And it's, maybe an hour and 20 minutes from Pittsburgh. And that was just, Pennsylvania is totally different from Ohio. Mm. So we took our lumps at that store. We moved to Erie and, took our lumps in the first store. We moved it to a new location. It's starting to grab traction and doing really well. So it really is a learning curve. So despite the land of misfit toys, we found success. And it's just a different world in medicine. It really is.
No doubt. I would be remiss if we ended this interview without talking about your Olympic experiences. You've helped athletes in 2012 London, 2016 yes. Rio de Janeiro, 2020 Tokyo. Can you share with our listeners that experience?
An interesting experience. And that is because of Spire Institute. So Spire Institute is about a half hour from here. And in 2007, 2008, I heard rumors that somebody wanted to build like a Disneyland. Now, we're in Northeast Ohio, and we have a foot of snow on the ground, or maybe 6 inches because it's melting right now. And so a gentleman who did pretty well decided he wanted to build something for the high school. Well, that morphed into this Olympic training center. And when I saw an article, well, me being me, I emailed him, and emails weren't that popular back then. I sent snail mail. So he invited me to his business. And we sat down, and building one, which was 250,000 square feet for volleyball and basketball, was built. And he wanted to build a track and field. So he goes, help me with this. I go, so he takes out his napkin and he shows his sketches to me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like the mad scientist. This guy's got to be kidding me. So another guy who was a 7'6" high jumper who jumped at Kent State is the architect. And so he and I designed the program, designed the place. And then when the place was built from scratch, I had to put together the track program. And I'll never forget, Ron goes, hey, Mark, we were out one night and we were having some fun. I'll leave it at that. He goes, why don't you quit your job and come work for me? And not knowing his financial backing or his financial, I go, Ron, I really don't think you can afford me. He got so upset. He goes, look, I have a good idea. I've been to your house. I think I know what you made. I said, Ron, I didn't mean to insult you. I go, I couldn't go out there. Chris wouldn't let me go out there unless we can open up a bed and breakfast because it's wine country out there. And he goes, okay, how many acres do you want? Oh my God. So I just did the consulting and coming back where you always come back, how life is so interesting. I hired one of our assistant coaches, and I was still consulting, trying to put everything together. And then he lasted for about a year. So we did a national search. And the national search, I was going to hire a gentleman from North Carolina, and driving out there when we had our grand opening, I get a phone call from a coach. And he goes, Mark, I want the job. Now, the year before that, when I was in Oregon at the Nationals at NCAA, Coach Craddock from North Carolina helped me try to get the word out. People are like, there's no way. What are you talking about? Because we're in the middle of nowhere. And I was able to put together our first college track meet thanks to Coach Craddock. But the person who we hired to become the track and field director was the guy that recruited me at Penn in 1982-83, Charlie Powell, who I trained with in med school.
Oh, my.
So, and Coach Nathan Taylor, who was the assistant coach, the track, the hurdles, he became the head coach at Cornell for about 18 years. Both those gentlemen came out to Spire to work there. And they're still out there. And so you never know how life works. So almost 40 years, these gentlemen have been in my life, and it is a blessing. So Spire is the reason why, because we have international athletes, we have world-class athletes, we have good athletes. And so everybody knows that they can call me immediately. And if there's a problem, I'm going to take care of them. I probably have never gotten paid, and that's fine. But the two people that really took me to that next level is Jen and Rick Shore. And Jen won the 2012 Olympic Games. And I remember she was training and she hurt herself in May. She came out here and they were kind of squirrely with me because they didn't know, right? When you're at that level and you're drug tested every day and this is your livelihood, they're all type of people, and they've been kind of traumatized with some other things. She hurt a quad, her rectus femoris, and she hurt her Achilles. She has the world's worst Achilles. I started giving her treatment, got my partner involved. I got a chiropractor, a good friend of mine. And I said, okay, unfortunately, you got to miss New York games. Just take 3 jumps. She was that good. Get to the trials. We'll keep treating you. And I'll never forget, she invited me to go to the games. And then a girl that good family friends with, who was from Ohio, who was part of my track club, was national champion at Penn State. Bridget Franick, she ran at Penn State. She made the Olympic team. And then I had a high jumper from Switzerland, a hurdler from Virgin Islands. So I just started getting these athletes from different countries. And that was really cool. And one of the most coolest experiences I ever had is that it was raining going into London. And her husband, who was her coach, Jen's coach, Rick, goes, we need this condition. He's like an idiot savant. We need this, this, and this to win. Okay. And when she won, it was like, it was so surreal. So that was such a tremendous experience. 2016 wasn't. So they were able to support me. And what we have to realize, you talk about standardization. We're the only profession that's not part of USOC.
Really?
Yep.
Did not know that.
Yep. And everybody else, a massage therapist, dentist, psychologists, psychiatrists, MDs, DOs, ATCs, massage therapists, but podiatry, the USOC won't recognize us and let us be part of the team.
Really?
So you want to talk about what a goal would be for me is that if we can bring our leaders of the field to have it. Now, there have been some podiatrists that have been involved. I think Dr. Julian Perry out of Atlanta. And then obviously I'm good friends with Dr. Saxena and learning from his experiences, and Matthew Word. But yeah, and I remember I got in trouble because there was an interview and the person who interviewed me says, oh, he's going with the Olympic team. I never said that. Right. I said I was invited to be on the Olympic training site because of Jen and Rick Shore. And even though I have my letters from USOC and Rio, I have it in my office. I took some backlash. People are like, oh, he's lying. He's doing this and that. I said, no, what I can't interpret what someone says in my words, but going to Rio was tremendous. But then Jen got the Zika virus. Uh-oh. And so 4 months in February, they had the women's track and field indoor trials to make the world championships. I finished doing surgery on a Sunday. We had about 1.5 feet of snow. I get a phone call from Rick. Mark, what are you doing? No, not much, Rick. What's going on? Well, Jen kind of tweaked her Achilles. Can you come out to Oregon? Like, when? Today? Because the Worlds were 4 days later. So, idiot me, I fly out there, took 12 hours through snowstorms. I get there, I give her treatment, getting her a little bit better. And then I got to get back to work. So I didn't watch the meet. I come back to work and she won the indoor world championships.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
She was on the top of the world. And then unfortunately she got the Zika virus, which NBC doesn't discuss. And it was just very gut wrenching for her. But, one athlete I worked with took third in the 800 meters. So I had 7 or 8 athletes that year. And then the female who won that was training at Spire. She was Greek, who ran to Stanford, Katerina Stefanidis. She won the 2016 Olympics. And then what's interesting, in 2020, Katie Moss is her last name now. She won the 2020 Olympics. So it's just, we're at a process. And I think I built my career knowing that anybody can call me anytime and I'm willing to help out. So the Olympic Games were amazing. and you just see how hard these kids work to get there. And people are like, oh, did you win a medal? Did you do this? No, it's not that. It's getting there and being part of the process and experience. So very fortunate. I don't know if I'll make it to Paris right now. I got to see if there's any athletes that make it, and then if I'm invited. But it is something I'll never forget, ever.
What an incredible opportunity. Well, like your mentor said, it just takes 15 years to be an overnight success.
Yeah. Now I'm pushing double that almost now, but it's been a great ride. Podiatry's been great for me.
Oh my gosh, me too. I wouldn't change anything. So one last question for you, Mark. What would you tell a prospective student that's considering a career in podiatric medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think you have to know what you get into, right? Don't listen to other people. And the honest answer right now, as I said, go in with eyes wide open. Because right now, medicine is in a significant flux and turmoil. It's not what it used to be when we started, and it's big business. And I think you're going to invest a lot of money into your future. So make sure that you take it as a business entity. Make sure that you minimize your loans. Make sure you're serious about it. And I think in the long run, you can be very rewarded with what you're doing, but it's hard. And I think that if they do it, then stick with what you are, be who you are. Because you and I both know, we have to fight for what we're doing. And what's always interesting, they may come in and spend time with me or with you or with other colleagues who've been in for 10, 20, 15, 30 years. I want that. I want that right now. We're in a society where, hey, who's the president of Bolivia? I could go right now and get instantaneous satisfaction, right? But it's a long, Dr. Habishaw, 15 years. So I would tell them, if you want to help people, you want the opportunity to teach and be academic, you want to be able to be a spokesperson for our profession and get it out there to let people realize that, we do provide help for people, and that, I don't get caught up on the doctor thing, but we put a lot of years in, so at least respect my title, if need be, and be able to fight nicely, right? Just don't roll over. And I can tell you how many arguments I've been in with other professions, and good, bad, and different. And you learn to taper your temper if you have to. But I also realize I'm not going to let someone disrespect me as an individual. So you may not like me because of my job, but you know what? Just because you may have a different degree doesn't mean you're better than me. And I think we always have to work harder and be better than our colleague, because they may have a little slip factor. So I would say, if you want a good job, you want to be educated, you want a doctorate degree, you want to be able to help people, you want to be able to have a good living, and you want to be able to be diversified. And I think it's a good opportunity.
Well said. Very well said. There's so many different avenues that podiatrists can take too. I oftentimes tell our students, or they tell me even when they're interviewing, they said, when I go and shadow podiatrists, they're always happy. And I always say that's because they've catered their practice to what things they like to do, So lots of opportunity out there.
There really is. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with medicine right now, because it's big hospital systems, or it's these big conglomerate. Someone told me that within about 5 to 10 years, it's either going to be big hospital systems, or it's going to be Amazon or Walgreens or Walmart, which are the private equities. And I think it's going to be a 2-tier system. So I think that's why I think people, to me, being in Chardon, Ohio, which I never heard of before, has been a blessing. Because there's, like right now, if I wanted to leave Ohio in the snow because I'm getting seasonal affective disorder, it's not like I can go to New Mexico or South Carolina and just pick up and tell people, okay, I'm going to do 20 surgeries this week, and I'm going to do this and this and this, and I'm going to see 50 people. I'm going to treat an Achilles problem. I'm going to do this or that. You got to prove yourself. And I don't know if I have that energy. I think the fellows do. And I always tell them, guys, get yourself established. And in 2-3 years, if you live in a nice area, I'll work for you part-time. So
there you go.
That would be good. But it's been, now I wouldn't say it's the easiest path, but you know what? I am so grateful and blessed for everything it's provided. Absolutely. I wouldn't change it.
I wouldn't either. Well, Mark, on behalf of the profession, I thank you for all you do for the profession and for these wonderful residents coming out. You've had 22 fellows now, and they have the ability to call you their mentor. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you do. And hopefully one day we can do this in person.
I look forward to it. And Mark, I'm going to send you one of these Dean's Chat cups because I know you put something with caffeine in it, probably.
You know, I don't drink coffee.
You don't?
I drink a lot of water. So I always got, here, I don't know if you can read this. Here's my expression to people.
Same.
Yeah. So when guys, what are you doing? Come on, you know.
Well, in that case, pour some water in your cup.
Yes, I'll do whatever. And tea when it's cold. But yeah,
sounds good.
I appreciate it. Hope I get to see you soon.
I look forward to it. And then to all of our listeners out there, if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating. If you're watching on YouTube, by all means, become a subscriber. And until next week, cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, Doc.